Jake Thompson had always been a simple man with simple dreams. After years of living in the noisy, crowded city, he decided it was time for a change. He wanted fresh air, open skies, and a place where he could truly feel at peace. That's how he ended up in Willow Creek, a quiet suburban neighborhood surrounded by rolling hills and friendly faces, or so he thought. Jake bought a modest home on the outskirts of the development, complete with enough land to bring his greatest passion to life: raising animals, his pride and joy. A massive but gentle bull named Bubba. Bubba wasn't just any bull. To Jake, he was family. The two shared an unspoken bond that went beyond owner and animal. But keeping a bull, even one as docile as Bubba, required careful planning. Jake knew he needed a reliable way to keep Bubba safe while ensuring he didn't accidentally wander off and cause trouble. So, after much research, Jake invested in an electric fence system. It wasn't just any ordinary fence. This one came equipped with cutting-edge technology. The electric fence connected directly to an automated bull gate, which allowed Jake to control access to Bubba's pasture remotely. Whether it was letting delivery trucks pass or keeping nosy visitors out, the system worked flawlessly. For months, everything ran smoothly, and Jake couldn't have been happier. But little did he know, storm clouds were gathering over his peaceful new life. In every neighborhood, there's always that asterisk person, the one who seems to thrive on drama, rules, and asserting their authority. In Willow Creek, that person was Karen Wexler. As head of the Homeowners Association, HOA, Karen took her job very seriously. Maybe too seriously. She patrolled the streets like a sheriff in an old Western movie, clipboard in hand, ready to pounce on anyone daring to break the HOA's strict guidelines. Her favorite pastime: finding fault with other people's properties. From overgrown lawns to mismatched mailbox colors, nothing escaped her watchful eye. It didn't take long for Karen to notice Jake's electric fence. At first glance, it seemed harmless enough, a thin wire running along the edge of his property. But to Karen, it stuck out like a sore thumb. Unsightly, she muttered under her breath during one of her daily inspection rounds. To her, the fence disrupted the visual harmony of the neighborhood. Never mind that Jake lived on the farthest edge of the development, where most neighbors rarely ventured. Never mind that the fence served a practical purpose. All Karen cared about was appearances. One sunny afternoon, Karen marched up to Jake's front door, her signature scowl firmly in place. She introduced herself as the head of the HOA and launched into a lecture about how the fence violated the community's aesthetic standards. Jake listened patiently, trying not to roll his eyes. When she finished, he calmly explained the situation. He told her about Bubba, the importance of the fence, and how the entire system kept both his bull and the neighborhood safe. Karen nodded stiffly, pretending to listen, but Jake could tell she wasn't convinced. Over the next few weeks, Karen's complaints grew louder. She sent letters, made phone calls, and even held impromptu meetings with other HOA members, all focused on Jake's fence. Despite his best efforts to reason with her, Karen refused to back down. What started as a minor annoyance quickly turned into something bigger. Jake began to sense that this wasn't just about aesthetics anymore. This was personal. And deep down, he feared what Karen might do next if he didn't find a way to resolve the issue soon. The tension between Jake and Karen escalated quickly, though not in a way anyone could have predicted. After weeks of receiving passive-aggressive notes slipped under his door and emails filled with increasingly stern language from the HOA, Jake finally decided it was time to address the issue head-on. He couldn't just sit back and let Karen steamroll him, not when the stakes were so high. The electric fence wasn't some frivolous decoration. It was essential for keeping Bubba safe and ensuring the neighborhood remained undisturbed by a wandering bull. Jake knew he had to make his case clearly, or risk losing everything. Jake attended the next HOA meeting, determined to explain himself once and for all. The room buzzed with quiet chatter as neighbors filed in, many glancing curiously at Jake as he set up a small presentation on a folding table. He'd brought diagrams, photos, and even a short video showing how the electric fence worked in tandem with the automated bull gate. It was hard to argue against something so practical, or so Jake thought. As the meeting began, Karen wasted no time calling him to the front of the room. Her tone was clipped, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, signaling that she wasn't interested in hearing excuses. Jake took a deep breath and launched into his explanation. He described how the electric fence functioned as both a safety measure and a tool for managing Bubba's movements. He pointed out that the automated gate ensured seamless access for visitors, delivery drivers, and emergency services while keeping Bubba securely enclosed. To illustrate his point, he showed a photo of Bubba standing happily behind the fence, looking every bit the gentle giant Jake knew him to be. "This isn't just about aesthetics," Jake said earnestly, addressing the group. "It's about functionality, safety, and responsibility." But Karen wasn't having it. Before Jake could finish, she interrupted him with a sharp wave of her hand. "We don't need a lecture on farming equipment," she snapped, drawing murmurs of agreement from a few members seated nearby. "What we need is compliance with the rules. This contraption," she gestured dismissively toward the diagram, "is an eyesore. Period." Other HOA members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to side with Jake's logic or Karen's authority. Some nodded along with Karen, eager to avoid conflict, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly torn. Jake tried to remain calm, but frustration bubbled beneath the surface. He appealed directly to the neighbors, asking if anyone else had concerns about the fence. A few brave souls admitted they didn't see the harm in leaving it alone, but most stayed silent, unwilling to challenge Karen's iron grip on the association. Even those who privately agreed with Jake hesitated to speak up, fearing retaliation or being labeled troublemakers themselves. Karen relished the power dynamic, basking in the fear she inspired. As the meeting dragged on, Jake realized he was fighting a losing battle, at least for now. No amount of reasoning seemed capable of piercing Karen's stubborn resolve. She dismissed his arguments outright, insisting that the fence must go within 30 days or face escalating fines. By the time the meeting adjourned, Jake felt drained and defeated. Still, he refused to give up hope entirely. Surely there had to be a way to convince the HOA, or at least enough of its members, that the fence was necessary. What Jake didn't realize, however, was that Karen wasn't content to wait out the 30-day deadline. Her obsession with enforcing her vision of perfection had reached new heights, and she saw Jake's refusal to comply as a direct affront to her authority. Late one night, as Jake slept soundly in his bed, Karen hatched a plan. She convinced herself that drastic action was needed to restore order to the neighborhood. If Jake wouldn't remove the fence willingly, then she would take matters into her own hands and deal with the consequences later. Unbeknownst to Jake, this decision would set off a chain reaction neither of them could have foreseen. For Karen, it was a chance to assert dominance and prove her point once and for all. But for Jake, it would mean waking up to chaos and discovering just how far Karen was willing to go to get her way. The night was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that blankets a neighborhood when everyone has retreated indoors, leaving only the hum of distant crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Karen Wexler, however, wasn't sleeping. She sat in her living room, stewing over the HOA meeting earlier that day. Jake's calm demeanor and logical arguments had irritated her more than she cared to admit. How dare he try to rationalize something she had already deemed unacceptable? To Karen, rules were rules, and exceptions were nothing more than loopholes waiting to be exploited. In her mind, Jake's refusal to remove the fence wasn't just an act of defiance. It was a personal insult. Determined to take matters into her own hands, Karen grabbed her flashlight and a pair of wire cutters from the garage. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was simply enforcing the standards that kept the neighborhood looking pristine. Besides, she reasoned, if Jake wouldn't listen to reason, then drastic measures were necessary. She slipped out of her house under the cover of darkness, her heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and misplaced righteousness. The cool night air brushed against her face as she made her way toward Jake's property, careful to avoid any loose gravel or twigs that might give her away. When she reached the edge of Jake's land, Karen paused for a moment, shining her flashlight along the length of the electric fence. It glinted faintly in the dim light, its thin wires almost invisible against the backdrop of trees and shadows. She frowned, muttering under her breath about how out of place it looked. Without another thought, she knelt down and began inspecting the wiring. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. This was her chance to prove a point, to show everyone that she meant business. Karen quickly located the main power line running along the fence and positioned her wire cutters. With a decisive snip, she severed the connection, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction wash over her. She imagined the look on Jake's face when he discovered his precious fence was no longer operational. Surely this would force him to comply with the HOA's demands. Satisfied with her handiwork, Karen stood up, dusted off her knees, and glanced around one last time to ensure no one had seen her. Confident that she had acted in the best interest of the community, she hurried back home, eager to bask in what she believed would be a job well done. Meanwhile, inside Jake's house, all remained quiet. Unaware of the sabotage unfolding just outside his window, Jake slept soundly, exhausted from the stress of the day's events. His security system, designed to alert him only during a complete power failure, failed to detect the partial disruption caused by Karen's amateur handiwork. Oblivious to the danger lurking mere feet away, Jake drifted deeper into sleep, dreaming of peaceful mornings spent tending to Bubba and enjoying the simple life he had worked so hard to build. Outside, however, things were far from peaceful. With the electric fence now disabled, the automated bull gate lost its connection to the system that controlled it. Slowly but surely, the gate began to malfunction, swinging open just wide enough to create a gap in the barrier that had once kept Bubba safely contained. The bull, curious by nature, noticed the change immediately. At first, he hesitated, sniffing the air and eyeing the opening suspiciously. But as minutes passed and nothing seemed amiss, Bubba's curiosity got the better of him. Taking a cautious step forward, he pushed through the gap and ventured out into the unknown. By the time dawn broke, the damage was already done. Karen, snug in her bed, had no idea of the chaos she had unleashed. She drifted off to sleep with a smug smile, convinced that her actions would finally bring Jake to heel. What she didn't realize was that her reckless decision had set off a chain reaction that would soon spiral beyond her control and leave the entire neighborhood reeling in its wake. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across Jake's bedroom. He stirred lazily, reaching for his phone to check the time. It was early, too early, but something felt off. As he swung his legs over the side of the bed and padded toward the window, he froze in disbelief. The automated bull gate, which should have been securely closed, stood wide open. Beyond it, Bubba was nowhere to be seen. Panic surged through him as he threw on his boots and bolted outside, heart pounding. Jake's worst fears were confirmed within moments. The electric fence had been tampered with, the main power line severed cleanly, its frayed ends dangling uselessly. Someone had deliberately cut it. His mind raced as he scanned the area, searching for any sign of Bubba. Then he spotted fresh hoof prints leading away from the property, disappearing down the gravel road that wound through the neighborhood. No, 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 Jake muttered under his breath, dread sinking into the pit of his stomach. A runaway bull wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. Bubba might be gentle, but he was still a massive animal, and unfamiliar surroundings could spook him. Jake grabbed his phone and dialed the local authorities, explaining the situation as calmly as he could manage. "My bull is loose," he said, trying not to let his voice crack. "He's big, but he's not aggressive. I need help finding him before someone gets hurt." The dispatcher assured him they'd send officers to assist. But Jake knew time was of the essence. He hopped into his truck and started driving, retracing the path of the hoof prints, while keeping an eye out for anything unusual. Meanwhile, chaos was unfolding elsewhere in the neighborhood. Residents who had risen early for their morning routines were greeted by an unexpected sight: a massive bull strolling casually down the street. At first, people weren't sure what to make of it. Some laughed nervously, snapping photos and videos to share on social media. Others panicked, rushing back inside and locking their doors. Children gawked from behind windows, pointing excitedly at the strange visitor. "Is that a cow?" one neighbor asked aloud, squinting in confusion. "No, it's a bull," another corrected, equally bewildered. Bubba, for his part, seemed unfazed by the commotion. He wandered aimlessly, occasionally stopping to sniff at flower beds or munch on patches of grass growing along the curb. But his presence caused widespread disruption. Cars screeched to a halt to avoid hitting him. Delivery trucks abandoned their routes, and mail carriers refused to continue their rounds. One particularly harrowing moment occurred when Bubba paused near a playground, causing parents to usher their screaming kids to safety. Thankfully, Bubba didn't react aggressively. He simply stood there, looking around curiously before moving on. Word of the escaped bull spread like wildfire. Neighbors called each other, sharing updates and warnings. Social media lit up with posts about the bizarre incident, some joking about Willow Creek's new unofficial mascot. But beneath the humor lay a growing sense of unease. No one wanted to admit it, but having a bull roaming free posed real risks, not just to property, but to people. Back at her house, Karen watched the scene unfold from her living room window, sipping her coffee with smug satisfaction. She had expected Jake to come running to the HOA by now, begging forgiveness and promising to remove the fence. Instead, she saw only chaos and assumed it was exactly what he deserved. "Serves him right," she muttered to herself, scrolling through her phone for news updates. She didn't stop to consider how her actions might have contributed to the mess, or the potential danger lurking in the streets. As Jake continued his frantic search, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just bad luck. Something about the clean cut on the fence wires gnawed at him. Someone had done this intentionally, and he had a sinking suspicion who. Still, he pushed those thoughts aside for now. His priority was finding Bubba and getting him back home safely. Little did he know, the answers he sought were closer than he realized, and the truth would soon come crashing down on everyone involved. By mid-morning, the situation had spiraled into full-blown pandemonium. Jake, exhausted but determined, was still calming the neighborhood for Bubba, coordinating with local authorities and a growing number of neighbors who had volunteered to help. The bull had become something of a reluctant celebrity, his lumbering figure spotted in various parts of Willow Creek. Photos and videos flooded social media, with captions ranging from lighthearted jokes to frantic warnings. One post read, *friendly reminder. If you see a giant bull near your azaleas, maybe don't yell at him. Despite the humor, tension simmered beneath the surface. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before things took a turn for the worse. Jake finally caught a break when a neighbor called to report seeing Bubba grazing peacefully in an empty lot 2 streets over. Racing to the location, Jake found his beloved bull standing contentedly amidst tall weeds, completely unaware of the chaos he caused. Relief washed over Jake as he approached cautiously, speaking softly to calm Bubba. With the help of a few kind-hearted neighbors and a makeshift rope harness, they managed to guide Bubba back toward Jake's property. By the time they reached the gate, sweat dripped from Jake's brow, but he couldn't stop smiling. His boy was safe. Finally. But the ordeal wasn't over yet. As Jake worked to repair the damaged fence, he couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that someone had sabotaged it. Determined to get to the bottom of things, he reviewed footage from the security cameras installed around his property. What he discovered left him stunned and furious. There, clear as day, was Karen Wexler sneaking onto his land in the dead of night, wire cutters in hand. She moved quickly, her face illuminated briefly by the glow of her flashlight, as she severed the main power line. It was undeniable proof of her involvement. Armed with the footage, Jake stormed into the next HOA meeting, ready to confront Karen once and for all. The room fell silent as he set up his laptop and played the video for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Karen's late-night sabotage unfolded on screen. Some neighbors leaned forward in disbelief, while others exchanged shocked glances. Karen herself sat frozen in her chair, her face turning an alarming shade of red. For a moment, no one spoke. When the video ended, Jake turned to address the group. "This is why my fence was cut," he said, his voice steady but firm. "And this is why Bubba got loose. Someone decided they didn't like how my property looked and took matters into their own hands, without stopping to think about the consequences." He paused, letting his words sink in before adding, "If anyone here still thinks I should remove that fence, I'm happy to explain again why it's necessary. But let's be clear. This isn't just about aesthetics anymore. This is about safety, for my animals, for this neighborhood, and for everyone." Karen, still reeling from being exposed, tried to defend herself. "I didn't know it controlled some stupid gate," she snapped, her tone sharp but unconvincing. "I thought it was just ugly." Her protest fell flat, met with skeptical looks from the very people she had once intimidated. Even those who had previously supported her began whispering among themselves, questioning whether her obsession with rules had gone too far. One brave neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Peterson, stood up and addressed the room. "Karen, what you did was reckless," she said firmly. "You put everyone in danger, not just Jake. We trust you to enforce the HOA guidelines fairly, not take matters into your own hands like this. You crossed a line." Other neighbors nodded in agreement, emboldened by Mrs. Peterson's courage. For the first time, Karen found herself on the defensive, her authority crumbling under the weight of collective disapproval. As the meeting continued, the tide turned decisively against Karen. The HOA board agreed to drop their demands regarding the fence, acknowledging its importance and Jake's right to maintain it. They also issued a formal apology to Jake, though Karen refused to sign it personally. Instead, she slunk out of the meeting early, muttering under her breath about how everyone was overreacting. Outside, reporters gathered, eager to hear Jake's side of the story. Though hesitant at first, Jake realized this was an opportunity to educate the community and maybe even prevent similar incidents in the future. The truth had come out, and while justice felt satisfying, Jake knew the real work lay ahead: rebuilding trust and ensuring nothing like this ever happened again. In the days following the explosive HOA meeting, Willow Creek buzzed with chatter about Karen's late-night sabotage and its consequences. The story spread far beyond the neighborhood, attracting attention from local news outlets and even a few regional publications. Reporters flocked to Jake's property, eager to interview him about the infamous Bull Gate incident. While Jake initially felt uncomfortable in the spotlight, he soon realized this was an opportunity to share his side of the story and perhaps teach others a valuable lesson about the importance of understanding before acting. Jake invited journalists to tour his property, explaining how the electric fence and automated bull gate worked together to ensure safety for both Bubba and the community. He patiently answered questions, emphasizing that the system wasn't just functional, but also necessary. "It's easy to look at something like a fence and think it's unnecessary or ugly," he told one reporter. "But when you understand why it's there and what it does, it changes your perspective." His calm demeanor and logical explanations won over many skeptics, including some neighbors who had previously sided with Karen. To further mend fences, literally and figuratively, Jake decided to host a neighborhood barbecue. He extended invitations to everyone in Willow Creek, including Karen, though she predictably declined. On the day of the event, tables were set up on Jake's lawn, laden with homemade dishes contributed by attendees. Children laughed as they tossed carrots and apples to Bubba from a safe distance, marveling at the gentle giant. Adults mingled, discussing everything from gardening tips to the absurdity of Karen's actions. For the first time in weeks, the atmosphere felt light and hopeful. During the gathering, Jake gave a short speech thanking his neighbors for their support during the ordeal. "I know not everyone agreed with me at first," he said, smiling warmly. "And that's okay. What matters is that we came together to figure things out. I hope this experience helps us all remember to listen to each other and to the reasons behind the choices we make." His words resonated deeply, earning applause and nods of approval from the crowd. Meanwhile, Karen retreated further into isolation, her reputation tarnished beyond repair. Once feared and obeyed without question, she now found herself increasingly marginalized within the community. Neighbors avoided engaging with her, tired of her rigid attitude and refusal to admit fault. At subsequent HOA meetings, members openly challenged her decisions, forcing her to back down on several pet projects she had championed. Her authority dwindled, leaving her bitter and resentful, but ultimately powerless to reclaim her former influence. The HOA itself underwent subtle but significant changes. Inspired by the backlash against Karen's behavior, the board implemented new guidelines aimed at fostering transparency and collaboration. Decisions would no longer be made unilaterally. Instead, input from all members would be encouraged. This shift marked a turning point for Willow Creek, transforming it from a place ruled by fear into one defined by mutual respect and cooperation. For Jake, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get after such an eventful chapter. Bubba remained happily behind his repaired fence, blissfully unaware of the drama he had inadvertently caused. Jake upgraded his security system, adding motion-activated cameras and clear warning signs along the perimeter of his property. He also took steps to educate his neighbors about rural living, hosting informal workshops on topics like animal husbandry and sustainable farming practices. These efforts strengthened the bonds between residents, creating a sense of unity that hadn't existed before. As summer turned to fall, the memory of Karen's sabotage lingered only as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what could happen when entitlement and impulsiveness collided. Most people chuckled when recounting the story, shaking their heads at the absurdity of it all. But beneath the laughter lay a deeper understanding that appearances aren't everything, and sometimes the things we don't understand deserve a second look. The saga of Karen and the electric fence became a part of Willow Creek's local lore, a story told with equal parts amusement and reflection. It wasn't just about a runaway bull or a nosy neighbor. It was a lesson wrapped in chaos, one that resonated deeply with everyone involved. For Jake, it marked the end of a challenging chapter, but also the beginning of something unexpected, a stronger connection to his community. What started as a clash of personalities had transformed into an opportunity for growth, not just for him, but for the entire neighborhood. Jake emerged from the ordeal more resilient than ever. He had faced adversity head-on, refusing to back down despite immense pressure. His calm and reasonable approach during the conflict earned him respect from even those who had initially doubted him. Neighbors who once saw him as an outsider now viewed him as a pillar of strength and integrity. Some even sought his advice on handling disputes or making practical improvements to their own properties. Jake didn't mind. He welcomed the chance to help others while sharing his knowledge about rural living. In many ways, he became the kind of neighbor people could count on, a role he embraced wholeheartedly. Bubba, too, played a surprising part in bringing the community together. After the barbecue, several families began visiting Jake's property regularly, eager to learn more about the gentle bull who had inadvertently caused so much excitement. Children adored Bubba, feeding him snacks under Jake's watchful eye and peppering him with endless questions about farm life. Parents appreciated the educational value of these visits, which gave their kids a glimpse into a world far removed from suburban routines. Slowly but surely, Jake's home became less of a private retreat and more of a shared space where friendships flourished. As for Karen, her fall from grace served as a sobering reminder of the dangers of unchecked entitlement. Once feared and obeyed without question, she found herself increasingly isolated, her name synonymous with recklessness and poor judgment. Though she continued attending HOA meetings, her voice carried little weight anymore. Other members took charge, implementing changes that prioritized inclusivity and open dialogue over rigid enforcement of trivial rules. The shift was subtle but undeniable, signaling a new era for Willow Creek, one defined by cooperation rather than control. Karen's actions also sparked broader conversations about accountability and empathy. Neighbors began to reflect on how quickly assumptions can escalate into conflict and how easily misunderstandings can spiral out of control. These discussions fostered a culture of patience and understanding, encouraging residents to ask questions instead of jumping to conclusions. Even those who hadn't been directly involved in the drama felt its ripple effects, recognizing the importance of looking beyond surface-level judgments. By winter, the neighborhood had settled into a rhythm of harmony and mutual support. Holiday lights twinkled along driveways, and cheerful greetings echoed through the crisp air. At the annual Christmas party, someone joked about naming Bubba the unofficial mayor of Willow Creek, drawing laughter and applause from the crowd. While no official title was bestowed upon him, Bubba remained a beloved fixture in the community, his presence a testament to the power of second chances and open minds. Looking back, Jake couldn't help but smile at how everything had unfolded. What had begun as a nightmare had turned into an unexpected blessing, teaching him, and everyone else, valuable lessons about resilience, communication, and the importance of standing up for what's right. Life in Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was better. And as he stood on his porch one evening, watching Bubba graze peacefully under the fading sunlight, Jake knew he wouldn't trade it for anything. The story of Karen and the electric fence would live on, not as a tale of discord, but as a reminder that sometimes, even the most chaotic situations can lead to meaningful change.